Hi, it's Lauren. Welcome back to my craft room. Today we have a video hop. It's the Pumpkins on Parade video hop and giveaway featuring the Whimsy stamps Build a Pumpkin Patch die set. So make sure you hop along. You can find all of the details down below in my description. I'm sharing here all of my different Whimsy stamps products that I will be using on today's card. You can find links to all of the products down below in my description as well. Please note that these are affiliate links, so you will help fund my channel at no extra cost to you if you do purchase anything through my links. I am going to be starting with my background. I am using one of my favorite papers from the Slimline paper pack called Buttercup, and I'm using some Distress Oxides just to create some depth and darken up the top of this paper in my background. And I am using dried marigold and wild honey and just going between those two colors until I'm happy with the result. I want those little white flowers to be more subtle in the background and have this nice deep tone at the top of my card. Of course, no background is complete without some splatter, so I am using my wild honey or this might be dried marigold. I don't remember, one of those two colors, but when I splattered it on, it was too light, too tone on tone, so I brought out carved pumpkin and added a lot more splatter. And once that was dry, I have some white acrylic paint, and I'm going to splatter that on my background as well, just using a piece of acetate, and I'm using my distress sprayer to add water and a scraggly paintbrush to splatter that on in my splatter box. Now I have already stamped and colored and used my Brother Scan and Cut to cut out all of my images that will be on my card today. As this is a hop, I didn't want to have you watch me color because there are lots of other videos to check out. But I will show how I added more detail to my pumpkins from the Build a Pumpkin Patch die set. So I've die cut all of the pumpkins out in some Neenah Desert Storm, which is a craft cardstock, as well as an orange cardstock. And I'm just adding some depth onto these pieces. So I'm going to actually trim off the stems of my orange pumpkins and glue them on top of the craft. So I added a little extra color to the stems of all my pumpkins using some brown shades of my Spectrum Noir Illustrator markers, and I'm doing the same thing using orange and golden yellow shades to add some depth onto my pumpkins. So once I'm happy with the outlining of my pumpkins using those alcohol markers, I'm also going to bring back out that carved pumpkin Distress Oxide, and I'm just going to add a little bit more to my pumpkins. I wanted to give it a little more shadow along the edges. So I'm going to color my large pumpkin here and then repeat the same process for all 4 of my pumpkins. Once I'm done coloring them all, I just trim off that orange stem along the top of each of those pumpkins, and I will glue them directly onto that craft cardstock a little bit later. So I'm going to set those aside, and I also want to add some Distress Oxide to my grass. I wanted, again, to have depth and dimension in my card. I'm using Rustic Wilderness and just distressing it along the bottom of this grassy piece that I cut using that Build-A-Fairy die set, but I left the actual grass parts the color of the cardstock. So now that my background is somewhat dry, I definitely should have let that white paint dry a little longer. You'll see I kind of get it all over my fingers in just a few minutes, but I have a Slimline card base cut. It is 7 by 8.5, and I scored it at 3.5 to have an 8.5 by 3.5 card base, and I glued my background paper directly to my card base. Now I'm going to glue those orange pumpkin pieces to their matching craft pieces, and once all 4 of those are done, I'm going to start putting my card together. So I know I want this really large pumpkin here off to the right, and I'm going to glue that directly down to my card base. And I'm also going to use some foam strips to glue down my little grassy scene here, but I want to make sure I have enough room for my sentiment. So I die cut the sentiment Happy Fall out of some dark green cardstock using that Cutie alphabet die set. I'm using my grid mat to line it all up, and then a piece of mint tape to pick it up, and wet glue to glue that down to my card base. So using the tape and my grid, it just helps make sure my sentiment stays straight. I'm going to leave that tape there for a few minutes just to make sure that my sentiment is adhered and the glue is dry before picking up that tape. And as you can see, I'm already getting some white paint everywhere, but that's okay. I recover, no big deal. I adhered my pumpkin using wet glue, the very large one, to my card base, and then I'm going to use some really thin foam strips to adhere down my little grassy hill. I'm going to make sure to leave plenty of room along the top part of that grassy hill because I'm going to be tucking in some of my pumpkins and my images behind my grass. So I want to make sure I have room to do that without having to cut down anything to make it fit. So now that that is all adhered, I can start adding in all of those stamped images, including my other die cut pumpkins. I'm just going to play around with my layout until I'm happy. And here is what I've come up with. So many images. It's so fun. I'm absolutely in love with my fall scene. And now that everything's in place, I'm just going to carefully pick up each piece and glue it down. Everything is adhered down with wet glue except for anything above the grass that is popped up, because that grass is also popped up. I did use a little bit of foam strip just to help stabilize those images. And there we go. Everything is glued down. I'm going to trim off anything that's hanging off the edge. I've got a few leaves and mushrooms hanging off, so I'm just going to grab some large scissors and just trim off on the 3 edges where those images are sticking out. Now, I did get some white paint kind of all over my happy fall sentiment just because I was impatient and my wet paint wasn't quite dry. So I thought I would help hide that by using some glossy accents over my die cut letters. And then I'm also going to bring out this embellishment set. It is a Halloween set. It's called Creepy, but there are these iridescent gemstones in there and orange sequins that I thought went really well with the color palette that I chose for this card. So I'm just using a jewel picker to pick up some of those rhinestones and sequins and place them all over my card, and then use some wet glue to adhere those down. Here is my final card. Again, I'm so happy with how it turned out. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial and you like this card as well. If you do, please click that like button. And if you're new here, I hope I've inspired you to subscribe. Make sure you hop along and check out all of the awesome videos using this die set today. Again, you can find everything about the hop as well as the giveaway down in my description. Thanks so much for watching, and I hope you have a wonderful day.